the kind of agreement that we signed with UMEME was not a good agreement. Even the president
admitted it.
It wasn't a good agreement. Along the way, UMEME, maybe out of guilt, recognized that they need to give Ugandans a good service. There are areas in this country which are under UEDCL. It would be interesting for you to compare how UEDCL is doing in those areas compared to
UMEME
areas where UMEME is supplying. That is very key, because we are assuming that UEDCL in those areas was building capacity and now it is going to come and replace UMEME. UMEME, with all its flaws, but you'd send a WhatsApp to UMEME and it responded to you.
The token would come. It would delay for a minute, but it would come.
UMEME sent you a message that there's going to be an outage in your area. What that meant was that if I need to iron, I need to iron now.
For 5 days, yeah.
So that by the time the power is not there, it's okay.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
My name is Joseph, the host of the Policy Digest. You're most welcome to this episode of the Policy Digest. Now, this is the podcast where we profile African ideas and leaders who are shaping the future of their communities. And at the core of changing communities is the work of civil society. Civil society comes in to fill gaps that governance has not filled, but also secondly, they cause alarm and create concern around issues that need to be known as issues, because before an issue becomes an issue people care about, there has to be someone who's sounding the alarm. So, in case you are a Christian, civil society is like John the Baptist. They are the ones who scream to say, the Lord is coming, there is this issue, please repent. So in this very podcast, we are going to deal with the economics and politics of UMEME's exit out of Uganda. And we shall be paying attention to the civil society analysis of what this means, what it means for UMEME to be exiting the Ugandan energy market at a time in history such as this. And I want to just give a few facts before we can forward into the chart. First, you will note, and I think if you follow Parliament Watch and other parliamentary monitoring tools, you realize that Parliament yesterday passed a supplementary budget. And if you go to vote 17, which is the vote that is going to the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, part of the money which was passed in that supplementary budget is $190.9 million US. That's up to $725.42 billion. And this is important because we've been sharing this quite often, that government intends to buy out UMEME. But this did not just happen. They are not just paying them out because they want to. When UMEME was coming to the Ugandan market, that's as of 2005, in the agreement which they signed with the government of Uganda, it was agreed that if they were not to be given a renewal of a contract at the natural end of the concession of that contract, then the government needed to buy them out. Remember, UMEME to date distributes 97% of the grid power in Uganda, and this is 97% of the grid in Uganda. And this is very vital because we have to ask ourselves whether we are going to get the same levels of efficiency from the government entity which is taking up the distribution of electricity in this regard. In order to do that, we're joined by Eric Odong from the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, well known as CSBAG. He has a master's in economics, has been into banking for 6 years, and currently is an economist with CSBAG. Eric, you're most welcome to the Policy Digest.
Thank you.
It's our honor to have you on this podcast. Could you love to tell us why is it that CSBAG is interesting itself in this matter? What's the relationship between CSBAG's mission and how 190 USD millions are being spent on UMEME's exit from the Ugandan market?
Thank you, Joseph. As you know, CSBAG is a lead civil society actor on budget issues. And this particular transaction of UMEME has an implication in the budget because it is going to be financed through a supplementary, as you have pointed out. Now, we have concerns around public financial management in this country. 2005, you go into an agreement. You know that this agreement will come to an end. For those people who were in that room in 2005, maybe, I want to assume, they knew that 2025 will come and Uganda will be here. We shall have to pay UMEME. How are we going to pay UMEME? That is the question anyone in that room should have asked themselves.
Or even those who wrote to UMEME telling them would not extend their...
We are coming to those ones. First, that group in 2005 should have put out a well-structured plan on how to pay UMEME. That did not happen. In 2022, we formally wrote to UMEME notifying them that this concession will not be renewed.
Extended, yeah.
Again, at that point, that is when we should have put in place a plan on how to pay UMEME. Today is about 18 days to the end of the concession. That is when we are going to Stanbic Bank to borrow to pay UMEME. Not even in a budget. So you ask yourself, by the time the Ministry of Energy presented its budget of this year, why was that payment of UMEME not included? So as civil society, we have repeated this issue of abuse of the budget process, and it is bad. It is very bad.
Do you think that Ministry of Energy intentionally refused to put it in the budget, well knowing that it would be financed via a supplementary budget?
Maybe let me contextualize what a supplementary is.
Okay.
The PFM Act put their conditions for something to be included in a supplementary schedule. Unavoidable. We cannot avoid to pay UMEME. It is okay. Unforeseen. You tell me, from 2005 up to today, unforeseen. We did not see that we are going to pay UMEME. We signed an agreement with the UMEME that we shall pay you. So why is it coming in a supplementary budget? Just that alone removes it. Unforeseen. From 2005, 20 years down the road, you are still not seeing that you have to pay
UMEME.
The money we are borrowing now, just imagine you had borrowed it in 2005. Would you pay the interest you are paying today? Probably no. You would have borrowed less, probably fixed it somewhere, anticipating that the day I will pay UMEME, this money would have accumulated for me to pay UMEME. That is planning.
I get you. Maybe, and I know we've gotten to the bull by its horns, but for the listener, why is UMEME exiting the market? They look like a good player. They have somewhat stabilized the supply. In your opinion, why is it exiting?
For me, UMEME is a good entity. I think UMEME is being punished for past issues. The kind of agreement that we signed with UMEME was not a good agreement. Even the president
Admitted
it. It wasn't a good agreement. Along the way, UMEME, maybe out of guilt, recognized that they need to give Ugandans a good service. There are areas in this country which are under UEDCL. It would be interesting for you to compare how UEDCL is doing in those areas compared to
UMEME.
Areas where UMEME is supplying. That is very key. Because we are assuming that UEDCL in those areas was building capacity and now it is going to come and replace UMEME properly. Another issue I see with UMEME is that the UMEME which signed that contract is very different from the UMEME of today.
How different are they?
This UMEME of today is owned by entities like NSSF. You pay NSSF, I pay NSSF. NSSF owns 23% of
now
UMEME.
Listed, yes.
UMEME is now listed. So in the past,
23.4%?
yes.
Meaning that Ugandan people
there
own
are
UMEME by
Ugandans who own UMEME. You look at the over 6,000 shareholders of UMEME and you see how many Ugandans are there. So we now see a changed entity in UMEME.
In terms of ownership.
This money we are borrowing, the question we should be asking ourselves is, how much of it is going to remain here? Because the 23% that NSSF owns in UMEME, that money will remain here.
That's true.
Then the other Ugandans, they have nowhere to go. They'll remain with their money here.
And maybe just to...
Maybe that path should have guided us.
But
and that is what we are trying to put out in our analysis.
And I know you're an economist. I know the share price of UMEME. Do you think this disorganization around how it is exiting the market is going to affect the share price of UMEME, because stock markets don't play very well with uncertainty and disorder?
Unfortunately, this one is in favor of UMEME. That is it. Because right now, if I have shares in UMEME,
I'm dead.
We showed you in our analysis. At that time, I think on Valentine's Day, a share of UMEME was trading at around 415 shillings.
Okay.
Now, this is government which is borrowing that money to pay UMEME. Then you go and try to tell someone right now who has shares of UMEME that you sell to me those shares.
No one will buy that share, meaning there's no demand for that.
They have already calculated how much am I getting from that 700 billion. That is it. So, a lot of things have gone wrong with that concession. Unfortunately, as a country, we have kept those wrong things from day 1 of 2005 of that concession up to the 31st day of this month, March still things are going wrong with that concession. That's how bad we
It
are.
was bad at the start. It was bad in practice. It's even bad in its end.
Yes, that's how funny it is. Now, you are going to approve that loan, then delays will happen in the loan. Remember, the agreement in 2005, we said, if we delay to pay UMEME
For 10 days.
even for 10 days, interest begins.
10%. I saw Minister Musasizi complaining about that. I think in late February.
So, if someone somewhere goes on leave and that money cannot be paid to UMEME,
Anything can happen with the government because they started processing this loan in 15th Feb. Up to now, they've just gotten the loan. Yeah.
Yes. So on the day when UMEME is waiting for their money, it is not there.
Could strip for a day.
Yes.
And we all of a sudden we have 10% of what?
You
190
will
million US
always-
dollars.
You will see in the next year's audit report.
Saying you should not have delayed.
We went to buy shares at Roku. The amount to pay is known, and someone fails to interpret a decimal place in a payment, and it results into an overpayment.
Decimal place.
Suppose we overpay UMEME because we have overpaid before. The Auditor General
Or underpay.
the Auditor General
I think we do more
has put all those cases in his report where we just mess up with transactions. Even this one, there is a possibility that, and that is informed by our past in similar transactions. So, the UMEME transaction is so unfortunate, and for public financial management,
It's a classic case of state mismanagement of such transactions, right? So I understand that there were like two options. It was a bad deal, but UMEME, in terms of efficiency of delivering the work, even when it's doing it at a very high cost, the efficiency is somewhat there and is admirable to some extent, away from the cost of the same. There was an option of renegotiating that deal, and there was an option of not entirely renewing it. Why is it that the government doesn't choose this option of let's renegotiate the bad faith, since UMEME had already admitted that the error in the same?
Me, what I think government should have explored is how does UEDCL acquire UMEME long term. That should have been an idea maybe in 2015.
Okay.
That is what government should have thought about. Because UMEME kept on increasing its investment.
From 2015?
Even as late as this year.
They still increased the investment.
UMEME is still investing, which is okay. Which is really okay. But like I've told you, ownership of UMEME changed. That was an opportunity for government. By the time government told UMEME to list, UEDCL
should have gone in and bought, let's say, like 50%?
Like 70% of UMEME. For it, that is when transition should have begun. Not this transition which we're doing in 2 months.
2 months is a lot of time.
Yes, not this transition which we are doing in 2 months.
It was late Feb when that loan proposal came through. Yeah,
we are going to see a problem. Then the excuse will be this was expected because of transition. Suppose you activated the transition in 2015 through that option of UEDCL buying major stake in UMEME,
and slowly,
and it absorbs UMEME's good practices into its mode of operation. By now, we would be celebrating the exit of UMEME. Because I don't believe that as a country we don't have capacity
I think we do. We have engineers, we have...
These
The
people who are
procurement
engineers
capacity.
here, they are consultants in other countries. They're the ones who are building systems in other countries. So there's nothing which can fail them from doing the same here in Uganda.
The problem is transition. It looks we have a transition problem. I think recently you saw Honorable Jonathan Odoro in Parliament, by extension the Speaker, talking about how the rationalization process happened. The transition process of folding agencies into ministries or just the layoffs, it didn't look like a well-planned process. And as a result, I think government is going to have to pay very heavily. I look forward to next year's report. I'm sure the Auditor General will have a notice. I don't want to talk about political transition. It looks we have a serious transition problem as a country. Whenever there's some form of transition, even privatization in 2001, it looks so messy. It doesn't always look like it's something which is structured to minimize the harm that comes thereof.
For me, my own personal view is that there are some people who want to benefit from chaos at all times. So where
they let
chaos
it happen.
does not exist, they will create it. They will create it. After privatization, some people benefited.
A lot.
You remember the case of Asian properties and so on.
Up to now.
People benefited from this rationalization.
A lot.
People have
Benefited.
benefited. After, another scheme will come where people hope to benefit. And if the state is not really going to work out a way of how to prevent this, it is going to continue reoccurring.
If your argument is right, it means it is not in the current state's interest to not see chaos happening during transitions, because that's where they maximize their interest. Maybe what would that interest look like?
Maybe I'm not an expert in state control,
Statecraft,
but
yeah.
maybe in such chaos, the state benefits in a way that it can consolidate more power. That is not scientifically proven.
Yeah, but from an incentive analysis,
yes,
why would they? They're not stupid to want to bring a loan. It was towards the end of Feb. Minister was hesitating. Actually, his argument, I think, when he went to National Economy Committee in Parliament was, you need to pass this loan. If you don't, we're going to have 10%. Like the very case you made here, he made it just explicitly that the moment you exceed by 45 days, it goes 20%. So please, in order to avoid that punishment, please pass that on. It was like they were holding a National Economic Committee on some form of gunpoint. Just
the supplementary which has that.
Yeah, sure.
If you look at other items there, okay, what it is now normalized that for every supplementary, it has to come with a headlining issue, then the others follow in. You scrutinize that supplementary budget, all of it, then you see. They know you will focus on UMEME. You will argue on UMEME, but there are issues there. Supplementary on wages, you are doing some supplementary on RAPEX. People rationalized, now we are paying them off. A supplementary on Luboa Hospital. So they knew.
Luboa was in the picture, right?
We are speaking about UMEME, but we're not talking about Luboa. You see that? So it just achieves its purpose. It is just...
Government is so political. Even that's the timing of bringing loan requests.
You have mixed political maneuvering with economic issues, and that's dangerous. Because these people have 3 months to use the supplementaries. 3 months.
Yeah, just before the financial year comes to a
the
close.
financial year is ending. Someone is getting money for Lubo.
Extra 4 trillion. That makes, let me say.
What are you going to do?
I get you.
We had a budget of 72 trillion.
Now it's at 70.
Now, if you add these 4 trillion, you have passed on the 72, then you're at 76 trillion.
Remember, they added a 14 trillion corrigenda just 2 days to the budget day.
We have normalized that bit. So, the 76 trillion budget compared with the previous year's budget of around 57 trillion. Now, if you have 76 trillion, how much of that are you going to realize? One of the requirements in the Public Finance Management Act is a justification on the source of funding for these supplementaries. Have you realized additional revenue? URA is...
I've realized the additional borrowers.
URA is perpetually, annually below its target.
That's true. It collects about at most 35 if it has grown its chest wide.
Is there somebody who has promised us money as a country? Where are we going to get this 4 trillion? Where is it coming from?
The argument you made there is it's more likely to be concessional funding, which is expensive.
No, but we have already gone to Stanbic to first look for the one of UMEME.
That's true. What does the other...
That now means...
It's about 3.4 trillion.
That means...
It's more than that.
We are not
around 4.4 trillion, yeah.
We are not only getting what is purported to be good from Stanbic. That may not be what we are... the entire amount we are getting from Stanbic. And that has implications, as we have pointed out in that paper. That has implications.
Serious implications,
so,
yeah.
We talk about fiscal discipline, but maybe other countries should come here and study fiscal indiscipline.
They learn how not to be disciplined by studying how indisciplined we are.
Yeah, because we have really taken this thing too far. We don't learn every year. We are just worsening the situation.
Talking about discipline, you indicate in this analysis on the issue of delayed valuation that in 2012, government makes a communication to UMEME that they will not be extending the natural concession of the initial agreement. You said that with less than a month remaining to the end of the concession, government is yet to value the actual buyout amount as per the concession agreement, which requires the actual buyout amount to be confirmed following a comprehensive audit of the Auditor General's report. I have 2 questions here. So what amount are they using if we haven't verified? And 2, what do you think went wrong with the OAG not doing this audit in time?
No, I don't fault the OAG, because, you know, when you are valuing a company, and there's a time element to it that you need to value as at this period of time, it is okay for you to wait for that time. My issue in that analysis was the government knew through UMEME's annual reports, because these annual reports are public, UMEME is listed. UMEME kept communicating its value every year.
It does.
Through its annual reports. So that should have, by the time we communicated in 2022 that we are not renewing, we should have estimated the value of UMEME and began providing for resources towards that value. So that when the Auditor General gives us a value of UMEME now, at least by that time, we would have started. Remember,
process, yeah.
I told you that 2005, the day when we signed that on 31st of March 2025, this concession will come to a natural end. That's the day we should have provided for how we are going to pay for UMEME in-house. but we didn't. Then, around 2015, we should have. We didn't. 2022, when we write to UMEME that we are not going to renew, now we are confirming that we are done with
divorcing,
UMEME.
yeah.
Then, at that moment, again, another opportunity came.
For us to start working towards it.
Yes.
And up to now, 1 month too.
So,
I think this analysis was wrote around 1st March.
Yes. Now, subsequently, the OAG completed an audit. I think they came with a figure of around $201 million.
Has UMEME accepted that valuation?
At least they have not communicated of their.
They're still studying it. Do you think, because if they were saying 339 USD, now you're saying 202?
201 around there.
That's a difference of up to 139. Do you think they would challenge it? Maybe in another arbitration, and that becomes another problem?
That is possible, but maybe what is informing that is the fact that UMEME itself inherited assets of UAB. So maybe there is some bit of net off there. That when you consider what you got at that time, when you came to take over, if we look at its value now, it is this. So we remove that from the current valuation. So maybe that could explain the discrepancy in those numbers.
139. It's still high USD, million US dollars. Maybe, and I think this is important. I believe in the second episode we should touch ground on government's new approach to nationalizing the most critical public goods that exist in the country, and what that will mean for service delivery. I also hope in the second episode we can have a chat on public debt in general and what it means for us to be borrowing domestically. And I saw some analysis that you did provide on how much this very borrowing is taking out of the economy and what that would mean for the broader economy. Keep with us in the second episode.
The Center for Policy Analysis is an independent think tank shaping parliamentary democracy, governance, and public policy in Uganda and beyond. Our mission is to shape public policy and strengthen democratic governance by delivering high-quality research, fostering collaboration, and empowering citizens. Our vision is a democratic society with transparent, accountable, and responsive governance systems. What sets CEPA apart? A unique consortium model that integrates expertise from diverse partners for multidisciplinary approaches. We pioneer thought leadership, leveraging tools like artificial intelligence to enhance impact. Through collaborative advocacy, we empower stakeholders to engage with legislative processes, all while combining rigorous research with a deep understanding of Uganda's political economy. Our flagship initiatives include Parliament Watch Uganda, that bridges the gap between the citizens and Parliament, the Policy Digest podcast that explores politics and public affairs across Africa, and the CEPA Convo, our bi-monthly X-Space tackling key public issues. Our work spans parliamentary democracy, human rights, public health, road safety, climate justice, artificial intelligence, and more, including the Africa Regional Conference on Parliament and Legislation. Join CEPA in shaping policies, amplifying voices, and building a democratic future. Visit www.cepa.or.ug to learn more or follow us on social media. The Center for Policy Analysis, a leading public policy think tank.
Close to the end of 2023, the government of Uganda amended a certain law which enabled the Uganda National Oil Company, which is a state company, to take over all the operations of importing oil. And what this meant is private players could not do the direct importation of oil into Uganda. After that, on Twitter, most Ugandans were asking, so did the oil price increase or decrease. And there's that meme which always shows that people say it decreased, or so to just show that there was a bit of lack of clarity. I understand also recently that a certain bill was brought to Parliament to excuse Ujagari power plant from income tax on every income they get. So there is a song on the tariff is high. It's high for the ordinary person, and I think a lot of President Museveni's rhetoric around UMEME is that their tariff is high. So I wanted you to share your thoughts on whether UMEME's exit will affect electricity tariffs for the wananchi, the ordinary Ugandan.
I think thank you so much for that question. You see, there's a lot of inadequate understanding around the dynamics of energy in this country. I think partly because of the communication strategy on the side of government. UMEME does not set a tariff. UMEME gets tariffs from ERA, Electricity Regulatory Authority. They are the ones who tell UMEME that electricity is at this price.
So UMEME just implements it.
So UMEME just implements that. You will remove UMEME, even UEDCL will implement a tariff by ERA. How ERA computes the tariff is what should be interrogated.
That's the
dynamics around the computation of the tariff. There were issues in the UMEME deal where they were saying some of the costs of UMEME would be recoverable through the tariff. Okay, now that UMEME is gone, let us see the composition of the tariff price based on...
Are they that transparent to say that if one unit is at 1,000, let's say 400 shillings is operation cost and maybe profit for UEDCL, and the other is recoverable on the investment that the supplier has made?
I would hope that, and I'm really hoping that ERA is going to become more transparent in as far as the pricing of electricity is concerned. But there's also this issue of deemed energy. Because you see...
What is deemed energy?
We have a problem. We used to have an issue of generating less. So the president said, to cure this, let us produce
more.
So we went into opening dam after dam. We never paid attention to distribution.
So we have power.
We produce the power.
But we can't distribute it.
But we cannot distribute it. You have heard of the Rural Electrification Agency, REA. It was there trying to make sure that
democratize access to power.
Power goes to especially rural areas.
Yeah.
You saw all the way that bit got Ugandanized in terms of flows, corruption, and abuse of public resources.
They closed that agency, right? If I remember.
I think it was a victim of rationalization. So, deemed energy is that energy which you have produced, but you cannot transmit it. But the person who is producing is charging you for it. Because for me, I came to produce. We had here ESCOM. Now we have Jagal. We are in the Karuma will start. This one in Kayunga. A lifespan of 50 years. In year 3, we are in defect. We are arguing with the contractor.
Isimba Dam recently.
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about. Will it reach 50 years? You see, those are the challenges that
What
this
happens in
sector
a
has.
scenario where you have power and you can't distribute it?
For me, if I've produced it and I've sold it to you, the power is your problem.
In short, let's say Isimba Dam, hydroelectric power plant, owned by, let's say, Milton and Milton's from India.
Yes.
So if they come in and they inject their own money, the power they produce, they sell it to government.
Yes. So for you, when you get that power, you find what to do with it. So that is why the other parts of the wheel have to work.
The distribution.
Distribution has to work. Transmission has to work.
Because if it
But
doesn't,
we have delays. Just transmission, someone will refuse. The pole is not going to pass here. Then you will take 2 months convincing that person that, this electricity will benefit you. So we have those structural issues. And they continue to hurt the overall architecture of public investment in this country. That is the problem. If you considered a private person, I want to give you an example of Ham. Ham recently had a problem with the KCCA and the church around the window there. They sat and they sorted it out. The man's project continued. That is a private entity. But when it comes to government, that is not the story.
People no longer contribute to government out of goodwill. They feel like every time the government asks you something, there has to be a monetary benefit to it.
A person will ask for something extraordinary, then the government side, that other person will also try to see how am I going to take advantage of that. Then even in some cases where you get this conflict of interest, where government people are the ones who have gone there to first acquire land so that a government project will come and pass, and they end up billing themselves.
During the budget process, they know this money is coming.
Yes, then someone comes to bill themselves. So they will be refusing government compensation through another person.
Saying, no, that money is little. Please increase it by 50.
Because they know how much is this side.
I was wondering why some people go there in the villages, someone is buying, and I'm like, oh, why are you buying land in this area? Kumbe that a man is a seer.
It is okay for an economic agent to speculate.
Absolutely.
But I think that love for your country should come at some point.
It's missing. Of course, that introduces a debate because the land tenure system in Uganda puts the person ahead of the state in comparison to a country like Rwanda, where the state comes before the person in cases of compulsory acquisition of land. And I think this has been an issue of land reform for a long time, even in the legislative agenda which they laid down for the last session of the 11th Parliament. They wanted to introduce it, but it is too politically risky, don't you think?
No, I would think, given the flaws on the side of public management, we are better off dealing with the problems of this system now. You imagine, we say it is government land.
Yes.
Maybe we would have more problems, given the problems that we have already.
Already.
Because if you just
it would solve some problems, but surely it would create more problems. I know, for example, the Ginger Express Highway has spent a long time, but the wheel of justice turns slowly. So sometimes those things are to be anticipated. Just to take you back. So the late Governor Mutebire, the late Governor Bank of Uganda, and President Museveni, I think one of the most fundamental clashes, and I think Museveni admits this even in his burial speech when he was commemorating Governor Mutebire, he says that they clashed on what position they should take, especially when it came to privatization of government entities. Governor Mutebire, with a background from the IMF and maybe from his economic background in London, thought that once critical public institutions like electricity, oil and others are in private hands, then we are able to drive more competition and more efficiency. Museveni thought otherwise. I think he's been socialist since his days, though he was a bit more liberal towards like that kind of debate. And this still draws back the debate of whether we'll see things creasing or creasing. Do you think that now that the state is taking back critical public goods like power, do you think it's going to drive more efficiency? Is it going to reduce road shedding? The basic issues. Is it going to reduce the tariff? The general efficiency, a response time for UMEME to respond to your issue?
I think the best way of answering that question is, do we have we seen some public entities perform well under government hands? Yes, there are some which
here
have
and abroad
performed well. I want to speak to Uganda specifically.
You don't want to use any other example?
National Water, for some time now, it has demonstrated good corporate governance. At least you see that there's some progress in there.
I think even UECDL, it was one of the most profitable.
Even UEDCL has demonstrated to us the ability to perform. So there is proof that public entities can
work.
Perform. But there are also some which have not worked. That is the unfortunate bit.
Problem is that they are the majority.
Yes. And you ask yourself, what is it that is allowing the others to perform, but these ones don't perform?
That's a question.
And that speaks to the entire governance architecture on the side of government. Because if an entity is not performing, then you ask yourself why. When you ask yourself why, you get answers. When you get the answers, then you take action to make sure that you make it perform well.
And I don't want to be a doomsday saint, but I think UECDL might work because people consume power on a daily. I don't think they will stand its inefficiency, just like water. So do you think that kind of daily demand for efficiency is likely to drive UECDL to perform just like UMEME performed? Do you think UMEME performed because they are good or because of the pressure they had? The same pressure which exists with UECDL.
I think UMEME had pressure from the customer and also pressure from government. That is it. Now with UEDCL, it will have pressure from the customer and no pressure from the government because they have been government. That's why I told you earlier on that there are districts where UEDCL is working right now.
We need to test them.
You get the experience with UEDCL. And that experience should be on small issues. My meter is not working.
What's the response time?
My token has not come. Those
What's the response
things.
time? Yeah.
You see, UMEME, with all its flaws, but you'd send a WhatsApp to UMEME and it responded to you.
The token would come. It would delay for a minute, but it would come.
UMEME sent you a message that there's going to be an outage in your area. What that meant was that if I need to iron, I need to iron now.
For 5 days,
so that by the time the power is not there, it's okay. Because it's a normal thing for a developing country now. In our state, it's normal to have some small inconveniences of that nature. Will that be the case for UEDCL? It is $1 million question.
We need to ask ourselves those
with
questions.
optimism, I'm hoping that integration between them and UMEME will happen, and I'm actually praying that the customer management function in UMEME is just rebranded to UEDCL. Maybe the other engineers, the ones who go on the pole, the ones who calibrate the meters, the ones who let those be the ones of UEDCL, the previous one. But the customer
it should be retained as it is.
Should be.
In any case, they were Ugandans. I don't think they were South African.
It is. Because most of them were Ugandans. Most of them were Ugandans. And they worked with those systems. So now that we are buying those systems, let us continue using them. Like the customer relationship management system that UMEME has, let us continue to use it. Now, let's not go through another phase of training someone in UEDCL on how to use a customer relationship management system of UMEME.
Let's just adopt them.
Let's just co-opt them. That would ease the transition. It is just an opinion on my side.
I hear you, and I think it's important for us to ideate in that direction, especially to question whether there has been enough and intentional capacity building for the entity which is taking over UMEME, because that extends to whether they will meet the same levels of efficiency. Just the second last issue we'll be talking about, as we had discussed before we ended the first episode, which was on the concessional nature of the borrowing that is facilitating the exit. You make an argument in this very analysis, which is that 24 stats from Bank of Uganda indicate that a net average monthly credit to government was 370 billion compared to 121 billion to the private sector. So you make an argument that the money that has been taken out of the local economy is up to 6 months of credit for local customers. Well, what does that mean in the grand scheme of things for us to be withdrawing this amount of money from the local market, the local money market for private investors, private businesses?
You see, the basics in economics, demand and supply.
Yeah.
Where is our credit coming from as a country? We have domestically generated credit, which is created by these commercial banks through the credit creation process. That is the core function of a commercial bank. We have foreign credit, which finds its way into our financial system. The two aggregate to become the available stock of credit for our economy. Now, our government likes to borrow.
They have an appetite.
And that borrowing has not spared this domestic market. There is something called crowding out. And people make it look complicated, but think of it this way. Government of Uganda has come to you. You are the managing director of Stanbic. Government wants 725 billion as a loan. In your earlier budgeting as an institution in December last year when you closed, you saw where you were. In January, you sat down, you prepared your budget 2025, because most of these financial institutions, their year runs from January to December. So you had planned to lend out a particular amount of money. So there is something called portfolio planning. How much of our money will go to agriculture? How much will go to transport? How much will go to oil and gas? How much will go to support education? How much will go to other social services? So you craft all that depending on your financial
muscle,
which you have built over time. And that includes mobilization of deposits from the public. Now, in Feb, just 1 month to your budget,
government shows up.
And it is taking 700 billion. Are you going to continue chasing this individual borrower?
Putting all ads, they have interesting ads recently.
You are not going to continue chasing those ones because they're high risk.
Yeah, they don't pay.
But government is going to pay you. That is the problem with that transaction. So, you are not picking 700 billion from just any ordinary bank. You're picking it from a big bank. What is the structure of Uganda's banking sector? You have the top 5 banks.
That's Stanbic.
Top 5. Stanbic Centenary is among them. I just want to end there. Those banks, when you look at the total profit from the industry, they contribute around 70% of it. Then the other banks have to
eat the rest
bring the
of
other certain percent. If you continue doing such things, you are now going to split those top 5 even. Because they already have a bit of convergence among them, the top 5. But now...
Like to form some form of oligopoly?
No, what I mean is, the top 5 will now be split, then you will have the top 1, called Stanbic. And that top 1 will be very far from others.
From even the top 2 up to 5.
Exactly. And that's why you will have a problem.
How is that a problem?
Because now Stanbic will isolate itself to bank government alone.
As a banker of government?
Yes. And yet it has the majority of the deposits, which would benefit these small
businesses,
borrowers. So you'll get a problem there. Remember, we are borrowing to pay UMEME, which is going. We are not borrowing from Stanbic and maybe we put in UDB for other businesses to get.
The money is exiting the
money.
economy.
Most likely, a significant portion will leave Uganda. Within the market, people have been negotiating rates based on Stanbic. The monetary policy, we have been on a downward side, reducing the CBR month on month. But how is it transmitting into a reduction in the lending rate? Studies have been done and they point to a problem. And the explanation from the banks is there are other issues. For example, operational costs, they are very high. Things like that. Now, you will have this person goes to Stanbic to get an offer from Stanbic, and Stanbic is giving them 15%. So he goes to the other bank and is like, hey, here is my offer from Stanbic. They're giving me 15%. What are you going to give me? Then that lender, that commercial bank will say, okay, since Stanbic is giving you 15, maybe let's do 17.
Because Stanbic is the benchmark.
Stanbic has been
the benchmark.
The benchmark. So now, if someone goes to Stanbic and is rejected from there, because Stanbic will now begin quoting high, because it is not going to tell this person that we don't want to give you money.
It will just make the interest so high that you can't get the money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then the other banks will see that now we are together with Stanbic. So if you want, you go there, because they know you will not get it. So the rates will continue
going high.
So
and also Bank of Uganda does not have so much to do, because ideally
we're operating a free market. We're operating
a free market. Yeah.
You don't know where the commercial bank got its capital from.
And
the shareholders put in their
money.
They expect a return.
They want it to go to the least risky.
The same government is borrowing through treasury bills.
This is funny.
So look at a commercial bank. You have bought treasury bills. Now look at Stanbic.
It has bought treasury bills.
It has bought treasury bills. The same government is coming to you now directly. They want 700 billion. You have given them. What are you doing? The year is complete. You have achieved.
Their financial targets have been achieved.
You have achieved.
And maybe as we close the podcast, in the recommendations, you really talk about one recommendation which I wanted you to shed light on, that government should analyze the shareholding of UMEME and offer a bond option to the NSSF, which owns 23.4%. What does this mean? As we end, you can pair it up with your parting shots.
Yeah, now that should have happened some time back. The bond option is a way of government trying to defer this debt. You are already indebted to UMEME, yes. But paying now 700 billion right now and paying 700 billion over a period of 15 years, which one would have been
better
for government? The option of you, because a bond to NSSF would mean government is committed to pay at least the 23%. If you look at 23% from the 700 billion, at least you have reduced.
You have reduced the burden of borrowing.
Your burden on interest. So you would at least manage. That's just one option. NSSF. What about if you added the other shareholders? Okay? And
you give them a bond?
You give them a bond, which would mature in
maybe
some
15
time.
years, 10.
There, you would buy time to look for resources until you are able to
finance the exit, yeah,
with less pressure on
10%, 20%.
with even less implications on domestic
borrowing, yeah.
Because
they have taken 6 months in credit for local businesses.
Yes, that was the other option. If that did not work, why not give NSSF shares at UEDCL?
Or maybe even these people who are owning UMEME.
Yes, those who would want to get shares at UEDCL, they would get.
I'm really quite curious about the fate of their shares, given that now they have been, they're like a bubble, they have burst. I don't think it's still at 415.
No. No one is going to make. Those people have already made their money from those shares. They have already gained from those shares. So those recommendations were just ideas on how, if government had thought about this in 2022,
15 or thereabout, yes.
Earlier on, those alternatives could have prevented this 700 billion problem that we are grappling with. It has implications, and the implications will be seen as we start the next financial year. We are not very far. We are 3 months.
It's just 3 months
from the next financial year. If domestic businesses cannot access credit, you are going to see collections from URA.
There won't be money for URA, correct? Yeah.
We are in an election year. So encouraging investment right now is difficult. Elections for us is a matter of life and death. And that is an area where investment is scared of. So, as an economy, we are very ambitious. Ambition is good, but our actions are not supporting our ambition.
That's very ambition.
That's what the mismatch is. Your actions are not supporting your ambitions. We recognize that the fiscal space is narrow, it needs widening, but we are not asking ourselves why it is narrow, who is narrowing it, and who should expand it. We are only saying we shall increase the tax base. We have a domestic revenue mobilization strategy. We have oil, which we shall produce and sell. But if you have oil, the petroleum fund has no money. So where is your fiscal discipline? That's my parting shot.
Thank you so much. We, as you have said, Eric, we of course have to put, how do they call it? I'm trying to soften the language. Okay, let me keep it as you said it, and not to be crude. We must put our actions just where our ambition is to ensure we don't speak things which we do not practice. Thank you, Eric, for joining us on the Policy Digest podcast, where we're exploring what the UMEME's exit means from a political economy perspective, but also from an economics perspective. I hope you learned quite a lot. Do well to find our content on other podcasting platforms, and we look forward to seeing you in the future every Monday as we feature every episode of the Policy Digest. Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest podcast, the Center for Policy Analysis podcast that is profiling African ideas and people that are shaping the future of their communities. Subscribe to all our platforms on YouTube and Podbean.